Anthropometry, designed by Alphonse Bertillon, began in 1890 and lasted approximately 20 years before being replaced by fingerprint identification. Alphonse's father, Louis Bertillon, a famous French physician and anthropologist, largely influenced Alphonse's knowledge and interest in the human skeletal system. Louis helped Alphonse secure a job as a clerk with the Parisian police in 1879, where he began to focus his research on the difficulty of identifying repeat offenders. Of course, at that time there was no system of identification in place. Even an understanding of fingerprints had not yet been well developed at that time. With much time on his hands to consider such a system, Alphonse Bertillon proposed a method of identification in 1879 using anthropological body measurements. With help from his father, he was able to successfully develop and implement anthropometry in 1882. This system consisted of using calipers and other measuring devices. After collecting all the measurements, Alphonse Bertillon entered into the file card and then his name could be referenced to his criminal record. Portrait parle. These two French words mean speaking likeness. Portrait parle can be defined as a rigorous system for verbal description of physical characteristics of the subject. It is based on the Bertillon method of criminal identification by measurements of the human body and is still in practice today to some extent. A distinctive description of every feature of the face and head are especially valuable for investigation. In order to recognize individuals who were repeatedly arrested, Bertillon developed means by which portraits could be sorted by common morphological characteristics, the specific shapes of the different parts of the face, and thus an individual's prior photo could be found without having to resort to browsing through large collections of portraits. In 1882, Alphonse Bertillon, also called father of scientific detection, said that anthropology could be invoked to aid in the sight recognition and identification of criminals. Bertillon designed an incremental physical description card, also called the Bertillon card, comprising of 4 areas: anthropometry, a field he enriched with new topological descriptions of ear, nose and iris; an incremental, a detailed physical description method which formed the basis of portrait parle; photographic description, which he continually enhanced by defining a general protocol for face; an inventory and precise mapping of all specific marks to be found on the body, scars, tattoos, moles and the like. The Bertillon card included spaces for description of the prisoner's eyes, ears, lips, beard, hair color, skin color, ethnicity, forehead, nose, chin, general contour of head, hair growth pattern, eyebrows, eyeballs and orbit, mouth, neck, inclination of shoulders, attitude, voice, language, habiliments. Forensic odontology is proper handling, examination, and evaluation of dental evidence, which will be presented in the interest of justice. The evidence that may be derived from the teeth, the age and identification of the person to whom the teeth may belong. Knowledge of forensic dentist requires encompassing of number of disciplines, since the dental records obtained can identify an individual or afford the information needed by the authorities to establish identification of the case. Identification unknown remains. Dental identification plays an important role when identification of remains of deceased person is skeletonized, decomposed, burned or dismembered and is invalid by, throughout the life, and the combination of decay, missing, filling can be obtained from any fixed time. Saliva. It is major source of DNA because it contains sloughed epithelial cells from oral mucosa and inner surface of lip. The enzymes such as Streptococcus salivarius and Streptococcus mutans are present on teeth and in the saliva. In polymerase chain reaction (PCR) technology, the streptococcal DNA sequence provides a means with which to identify the bacterial composition from bite marks and can be matched exclusively to those from the teeth responsible. Teeth would act as major source of DNA because its ability to withstand to undergo changes. Some authors suggest that teeth are better sources of DNA than skeleton bones. DNA is found in vascular pulp, odontoblastic process, accessory canals, and cellular cementum. Dental pulp can also be used for DNA analysis and is good source for determination of blood groups. The presence of ABO blood grouping antigens in soft and hard tissues make possible to determine blood group. Of highly decomposed remains 17. The DNA from the teeth is not only acts for primary identification, but it can also be used as reference sample to relate the other tissue fragments. Forensic serology. Forensic serology is the application of immunological and biochemical methods to identify the presence of a body fluid or tissue sample encountered in connection with the investigation of a crime and the possible further genetic characterization of the sample with a view to determining likely donors thereof. Ballantyne, 2000. Here, the genetic characterization involves polymorphic antigens and the proteins present on the blood cells, and does not include DNA genetic markers. Forensic serology thus is the study and examination of body fluids such as blood, semen, sweat, urine, saliva, fecal matter, and other fluids mainly for identification purposes in criminal, medico-legal investigations. Blood is the most commonly recovered and one of the most important pieces of evidence utilized in forensic investigations. It is commonly recovered in cases of homicide, assault, and terrorist attacks, including bomb blasts. Blood as evidence holds significance in the criminal justice system as it can link a crime with a criminal or exclude an individual's involvement in a crime. Moreover, the pattern of blood stains can help in reconstruction of a crime scene by conveying information about the relative position and movement of the criminal and victim at the crime scene. Forensic anthropology can be described as the analysis of human remains for the medico-legal purpose of establishing identity. It is a multidisciplinary endeavor that applies the knowledge of biological anthropology and human osteology to cases where human remains are skeletonized, or where a detailed understanding of the growth and development, morphology, or reactive norms of the human body can assist other disciplines in positive identification. As such, it is perhaps best placed as a sub-discipline within the wider practice of forensic human identification, having applicability to both the living and the dead. Forensic anthropology and human identification. The role of the forensic anthropologist focuses on applying detailed knowledge of the development, morphology, and variation of the human body as an aid to establishing, confirming, or indeed refuting personal identification. 4 basic biological criteria form the basis of any primary identification: skeletal or developmental age, biological sex, living stature, and ancestry or racial affiliation. 5. These characteristics are supplemented by secondary traits, which include the following: body modifications, evidence of surgical interventions, including scars and prosthetics, evidence of trauma, and chronic hard and soft tissue diseases that may leave characteristic macroscopic and microscopic lesions on surviving tissue. DNA typing, since it was introduced in the mid-1980s, has revolutionized forensic science and the ability of law enforcement to match perpetrators with crime scenes. Each year, thousands of cases around the world are closed with guilty suspects punished and innocent ones freed because of the power of a silent biological witness at the crime scene. This book explores the science behind DNA typing and the biology, technology, and genetics that make DNA typing the most useful investigative tool to law enforcement since the development of fingerprinting over 100 years ago. As noted in the introduction, this volume is intended primarily for DNA analysts or advanced students with a more in-depth look into subjects than its companion volume Fundamentals of Forensic DNA Typing. The requirement of having relatively undisturbed DNA is a significant restriction. One could not identify, say, the last Russian Tsar from a collection of burned bones using RFLP technology. However, the identification of the remains of Tsar Nicholas II was indeed made using a more modern technology, which involves short tandem repeats (STRs). STRs are 2-5 BP DNA sequences that are repeated several times in succession.
Hi. I'm Sean Drahcir Orate. From CR23. This subject is Personal Identification and Technique. By Professor Jopher F. Nazario. Thank you for watching.